All right. It's been a while, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Welcome back to Power of the Pack, the Female Quotient LinkedIn Live series, where we have timely, relevant, culturally conscious, and real conversations on Tuesdays. My name is Amber Coleman Mortley, and I lead community and culture here at the Female Quotient. I'm particularly excited about today's conversation because we get by with a little help from our friends, and all the better when these friends are from cultural backgrounds and lived experiences that are vastly different from our own. Although, let's keep it real, forging adult friendships can be challenging, but stepping outside of our comfort zones to form cross-cultural connections offers significant benefits. But a study, according to the Pew Research Center, 63% of adults tend to have close friends of the same race or ethnicity. So what's really required to truly make meaningful friendships across cultural differences and experiences? Today, we're going to unpack how to navigate cultural misunderstandings, share the emotional labor, and confront our biases so that everyone can benefit from all that cross-cultural friendships can offer. I'm so excited for our panelists today, but before we get started, we're going to watch this quick video from our social media team on the cross-cultural friendship between Pauli Murray and Eleanor Roosevelt.
We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms which give them dignity.
Friendship can be a profound force when it is unconfined by societal norms. Such is true for the bond formed between Eleanor Roosevelt and Pauli Murray, two extraordinary people from vastly different backgrounds brought together over a shared commitment to social justice. Pauli Murray was a Black civil rights activist and legal scholar born in 1910 Baltimore, existing, let alone thriving, as a person at the intersection of multiple oppressed identities in the 20th century was no easy feat. Murray knew all too well the plight of living in a society dominated by the idea that Black people were inferior to white, women were inferior to men, and queer personhood was all but erased. Pauli committed their life to rewriting the narrative that society had destined for them. Eleanor Roosevelt, on the other hand, hailed from a privileged background. Born in 1884 New York, she was the niece of Theodore Roosevelt and later the wife of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. She was a humanitarian, a UN diplomat, and used her platform as First Lady to advance social justice causes. Both feminist icons in their own right, it was their differences that would lead to a friendship of profound significance. Their friendship began in 1938 when Murray wrote to the president criticizing his failure to rebuke the University of North Carolina for its refusal to admit Black students. However, it was Eleanor who eventually replied, sparking the beginning of a decades-long cross-cultural friendship that was particularly rare for the era. It was around this time that Murray enrolled in Howard Law School. Throughout Murray's academic career, they faced countless exclusions and setbacks on the basis of sex and race. In their letters, Murray often illuminated to Roosevelt the experience of walking through life as a female-born Black queer American. They offered each other mutual support and encouragement, and the respect they had for one another transcended boundaries of race and privilege. The story of Pauli Murray and Eleanor Roosevelt's deep connection demonstrates how friendships can not only enrich our lives, but broaden our horizon and inspire us to grow.
All right. You can check that video out on all of our social media channels. After today's conversation, we encourage you to go through and add your comment. Tell us what you think about the video, what you think about their friendship. We also asked our community members on Instagram this prompt: how have diverse connections positively impacted your life? And we're going to read through some of these comments, but also please share your thoughts with us in the comment section. So having different perspectives eases a lot of anxieties and limiting attachments to beliefs. Love that. Helps me to know the real thoughts people who don't look like me have in everyday life, right? I love that. Also, they have challenged all the assumptions I used to have about people in the world. Listening to different opinions helps me develop my own. So much amazing food. I would say that's one of my favorites. Radically different experiences and perspectives I've never thought about. So appreciate that. Increase my empathy and helps me check myself. Yes, yes, yes to that. They opened me up to new worlds, new perspectives, and shown me new ways to grow. So looks like amazing, amazing comments from our community on Instagram. Really appreciate everyone who contributed this week. We have an Instagram story for our community on the Monday before Power of the Pack. If you follow us on Instagram at Female Quotient, you can share your voice because you just might see your response on our next Power of the Pack conversation. All right, before we get into our panel, I want to say that this is not a panel. This is an equality watch party, and we expect each of you to interact and participate in the comment section. Every week, y'all show up and show out, and we love it. Please tag any friends or text any colleagues who need to be here with us right now. And make sure you connect, because at the Female Quotient, we're doing the work to raise her profile. When women are totally crushing it, we have to speak up and share it with everyone who will listen. So we challenge you to grow your network by connecting on LinkedIn with all of our speaker experts today and at least 2 people from the comment section. All right, finally, it is time. Yes to that, snaps. All right, it is time for us to engage the power of the pack. I am delighted to be joined by my guest today. We're going to have an amazing dynamic conversation. I'd like for each of my guests to, share who you are, what you do, and why you're excited about this conversation about navigating cross-cultural friendships and relationships. Dr. Kayla, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Dr. Kayla. I practice as a health and wellness coach. I work with women and girls of diverse backgrounds, encouraging them to be powerful leaders in their own right, regardless of what they faced in the past. I'm also the creator of Dear Mixed Girl, where I write personalized letters to ladies of diverse backgrounds to help them understand that they are not alone in their experiences. I am so glad to be here today because this conversation is meaningful in every sense of the word. Being in a relationship or a friendship with someone who is of a different background can bring so many great things to the table in terms of empathy and understanding and true compassion, and that's what this world needs. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Hi, I am Tracy Baker Simmons. I'm an executive producer. I'm a writer, director sometimes. But most importantly, I am a pioneer of celebrity reality television. And I'm actually excited about today because this topic is very near and dear to me. I grew up in honestly one of maybe 5 Black kids in my high school, and now as a professional in the television space, and it's particularly the reality or non-scripted space, I basically have built my career on inviting people into worlds that they never knew existed, which I think is also what happens when we forge cross-cultural friendships.
Yes to all that. Tracy, I was so busy listening. I was like, my name is LL Kirshner. I'm a screenwriter, an author. I spent a lot of time living in Asia, in the Persian Gulf, the Middle East, and in India. And that has become the basis of 2 of my memoirs. I also run a storytelling show every month, which I feel like this is not my moneymaker, but I think it's one of the most important things I do because I have been doing this now for years, since I lived in New York, since around 2010. And I have seen so many people change in so many ways through doing this. And what I really believe strongly is that when we see the world through other people's eyes, it changes us. And really, my first book is all about that because I went to Qatar thinking I was going to help the women there learn about, I don't know, I was working for Carnegie Mellon University and I thought I was bringing education and I was so wrong. Anyway, so thank you for having us and thank you for doing this.
Hi, everyone. My name is Janice Middleton. I'm so excited to be here to sit and have this conversation with you ladies. I am the Chief Inclusion Officer at a couple of ad agencies here in Atlanta, Guided by Good, Trade School, and 22 Squared. And I'm really excited to have this conversation just because friendships are, it's one of my top 5 things that I love about life, right? And cross-cultural friendships obviously deepen that. And I'll be honest, I think my cross-cultural friendships over time have really led me into the role as an inclusion officer, honestly, and really deepened my passion for the role and really helping to get the word out there about cross-cultural education and friendships.
The classic Zoom mistake by not turning off your mute right when you're getting ready to talk. I love it. My name is Danielle Daniel. I currently work at Billboard as the account director for brand partnerships for entertainment, gaming, and sports. My ultimate background is marketing across client side with Sony Electronics, and then various agencies through like paid search and social. So digital marketing is my love and passion. And really, this conversation for me stems from having a background from being from a lot of different places, but then also understanding how that impacts us in our day-to-day lives when it comes to marketing and advertising, and how we view just certain products and brands and brand building, and what that looks like and where that comes from. And I think that having a more just kind of diverse workforce, and shout out to Janice for being someone who is actually being able to do that work in that sense, in that way, but really just getting to know somebody who doesn't look like you is just really important. So that's really why I'm here.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Dr. Olivia Ganjui. I'm excited to join this conversation. My pronouns are she, her, by the way. Years ago, I was actually able to give a TED Talk on making friends across culture while living in Idaho, because I'm actually from Washington, D.C., also known as Chocolate City. So I actually had a culturally emerging experience moving to Idaho for my PhD. And I wondered about how people were able to make friends across culture, and just started the conversation. And I'm technically also a professor, in addition to being a licensed professional counselor for the state of Idaho. So for me, I'll actually be doing research studies on this moving forward and putting forth more knowledge on it, because I think it's super needed and necessary. We have to be able to bridge more understanding across cultures. And I say that when I think about race, I think about sexuality, gender expression, gender identity, religion, trauma background, and more. So super thankful to be in this conversation, and yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lorraine Pasquet. I am a French artist currently based in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So it's 6 a.m. right now. Hope I don't look too tired, but it's such an honor to be here. Yeah, I think a moment that changed my life when I was a kid, when I was 12, my family, my parents, and my 2 siblings, we left for 9 months and traveled all around the Mediterranean Sea in a camper van. And I remember having my mind blown at 12 years old when I realized that the way that I was growing up in the south of France was not the way these other children I was meeting who were my age were growing up. And in my small brain, it just something clicked. And I realized that, yeah, the way they were dressing up was different. The way that what they ate was different. Their relationship to their family was different. And I really believe that that was a moment that changed my life. What I've been doing the last 4 years is touring an exhibition around New Zealand called Wahine, which means woman in Te Reo Māori, which is the indigenous culture of New Zealand. And I've been so privileged to be holding the space and to be given the trust to do that. So I was recording the life stories of Māori women around the country. And through that, I have made lots of friendships and have had to address all these things and get into vulnerable places and learn all the tools that we need so that we can have these conversations and make these friendships. So what I'm excited about today is having this conversation with people who are not living in New Zealand, because things are done a certain way here, and I feel like it looks like most of you are in the US, but I know that things are different in the way we relate to one another. So yeah, honored to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So glad to have all of you. Also, yeah, Dr. Olivia, DMV, stand up. All right, same. So I just want to say, and I hope everyone in the audience who is participating in the chat is just as excited as I am about having this conversation. We have real experts, y'all. So let's go. Can we start by unpacking? But actually, I do want to incorporate some community conversation. But I do want us to think about this next question about how we unpack the challenges of building and maintaining adult friendships. So I'd love for all of you to think about that as we acknowledge some of our community members' comments. So Robin says, love this topic and the concept of power of the pack. Must be the level wolves I have as I refer to my team as our she pack. Yes, Robin, love that. Dawn says, I hear you, Danielle. I have lived and worked in 44 countries thus far and no longer have a single culture with me. It can make things very difficult when relating to those who look like me, and especially from my original homeland, which no longer feels about home. So I appreciate that. Misha says, having friends and colleagues from a wide range of backgrounds provides us with much needed insights and perspective. So I want to let everyone know, please keep your questions and conversations coming. Dawn asked, can I just double check, just listening to a few of the speakers, is this event more about the way we look or about our many different cultures? And I want to say that this is more about our many different cultures, the backgrounds that we bring with us and carry with us, and how do we bridge these divides in order to have these meaningful relationships. So thank you, Dawn, for that level set. All right, so I'm going to start off with Danielle and then go to Tracy. And then I'll let everyone else know who's next. So Danielle, let's unpack the challenges of building and maintaining adult friendships. What, in your opinion, are they?
I mean, it's really hard to be kind of vulnerable. When you were young, it was easy because it was like, look, I like Barbies, you like Barbies, let's go play with some Barbies and talk about, boys. None of this, it wasn't hard. Nowadays, it's really difficult because you're older, you're more kind of into yourself in that sense. You're less likely to be vulnerable in that way. You don't want to come across as a weirdo because you've all had those conversations where you're talking to somebody and you're like, you're kind of weird, but you don't really want to you want to be that person. So it really kind of doesn't really kind of open itself up to that. Also in that sense of when you're at work, it's really difficult to separate the work you from the real you and those kind of things. And then most people don't really have any other outlets to make friends outside of that. So it's funny because when people are like, oh, you're telling me you have to leave my house? Yeah, you gotta leave your house. You have to find a hobby. You have to go do something that other people are interested in and those kind of things. And so it makes it really difficult. And as an adult, the older you get, the less likely you are to trust people or give people a second chance or to open yourself up to having somebody hurt your feelings and those kind of things, because it's a lot harder. It's more difficult to really be able to open up that way.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I think that definitely we in adulthood, we bring our bumps and bruises and we built guards and walls and, we just, and if you're living in a coastal city like a New York or you don't talk to strangers. So it's, okay, you're talking to the people at work, but then that's the people at work and you don't want them in your personal business. So interesting. And fortunately, I work in entertainment where it's a weird thing that we kind of make friends with each other. And my husband's like, your work friends are your friends. And that's, but the idea of being able to even add that to your plate, because you're parenting and your marriage and your family relationships and things like that. So then to look at that. But I will say I moved to New York at the ripe old age of 40 something, I think, about 12 years ago. And I realized that the one thing that I missed about Atlanta, the only thing was my friends. And I really had to navigate, how do I make new friends as an adult? And it has been challenging. And I'm still working on it. You join a place like Soho House and they tell you can't talk to people, but now they made that app so people can know people are there and they can connect, because they realize, why are you paying for this membership if you don't connect? But I just think that it becomes this thing, because we're showing up with a lot of more heaviness than we had as children. And we don't realize that there is this value in meeting new people, forging new relationships, and continuing to grow as we did as children. So it's very, very challenging because of the things that we're carrying with us, I believe, more so than anything.
Mm.
Yeah, I would agree with all of what's been said. And the only thing I think I can add to that is time is a huge factor. As women, there are so many constraints on our time. We have children. I have stepchildren. I'm a new grandma, which is very exciting. Anyway, so there's family. I have my partner. There are so many constraints on our time, and I don't know about you all, but sometimes I meet people and I think, okay, you need too much. Like I can't, and I have to pull back, and that's real because I have developed healthy boundaries, and that's another difference too. I would meet someone, and if we both like the same band, I was like, we're best friends now. And it is not that way anymore. I have a much higher bar. I mean, and also right now I'm based in Florida right now, so I'm real careful about who I let in. And I think that's real. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, I also have to be willing to put in the time. It's a lot like dating. When you first meet someone, you're not going to connect unless you're willing to spend real large amounts of time. This is why you cannot become boyfriend, girlfriend over text every few days. Right? You have to actually have that face-to-face time. This is why a lot of times, we connect with our work colleagues because we are face-to-face with them, sometimes more than with the people that we care about or want to spend more time with. And I actually have that written sort of into my schedule, like time made for friends. And the other day, a friend wanted to connect during a time that I have blocked for writing, but I know she's actually moving, and I'm not going to see her if I don't go and see her. And frankly, this month I've put a lot into NaNoWriMo. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, but you try to commit to writing a couple thousand words a day to pop out a novel in a month. I'm not popping out a novel in a month, but I've been typing a new story. Anyway, and this is after that, so I'm gonna go meet her during my, writing time that I have carved out, because I know that's just a priority for me. Like every year I like to do an inventory and look at, okay, what is it that I have achieved on my life goals, my work goals, my spiritual goals. And that's really important, because if I'm not taking stock, I really don't know what's happening. So that commitment comes out in time.
I appreciate literally all that was shared, especially about the reality that many adults don't want to get burned twice and the lack of time. So love those two highlights. I do want to share a bit from our community. Baina says, I love this topic so much that I'm going to write a book about it one day. Similar to another commenter, I've lived, worked, and traveled to almost 40 countries, and home means something very different to me than many. I feel very seen in this conversation. I see you, Baina. Appreciate you coming. I want to come to Janice and Dr. Kayla real quick, because we've mentioned work. So, can we talk a little bit? I'm going to go a little off script, just talk a little bit about, the challenges of building, maintaining adult friendships, and then thinking about where our work friends come into this, being the authentic person that we can or want to be, or maybe don't want to be, when we're trying to build these cross-cultural friendships, adult friendships at work.
I think it comes down to, we have so many different circles, right? Sometimes those circles, if we're having a big dinner or a brunch or something like that, sometimes those circles will meet and sometimes they won't, right? So sometimes it's work friends and sometimes it's personal friends, but I think it really comes down to an insane amount of intentionality. I know you all have seen the meme, right? Where it's like, hey girl, let's have a dinner. And then 365 days later, you finally have that dinner, right? Because I'll tell you, in my life, my calendar is no longer my own. I can forget it, and I don't even have children or a husband. And yet my calendar is still not my own, right? So I have to be very intentional. And I will tell you, I have so many sticky notes around my desk. Call this person next week, call that person next week. If they pop up in my mind, I have to make sure I leave myself a note to contact them, even if it's just a hey, check in, whatever the case may be. It may not be a long conversation, because we may not have time for that because we have to respect where everyone's level is in their lives and where they are in stages of life. I think we have to be understanding of that. But I think from a COVID standpoint, I'll tell you, during that time is when, if someone popped up in my mind, either if I didn't text right then, I would leave myself a reminder. So it's an insane amount of effort and intentionality, and you have to handle it with care, right? You really do have to handle it with care, because your folks are going to be the ones who are with you through it all, good, bad, indifferent. So I've learned to really, really hold these relationships very near and dear, both professionally and personally, honestly.
I kind of want to piggyback off of that to say that no matter what kind of relationship you are entertaining at the moment, people do bring their stuff with them. They bring their families, they bring all kinds of traumas and things that they're facing on a daily basis. So for me, I know that it's important to understand that they are people. They are not robots, nor am I. And just as well, when we're thinking about relationships in the workplace and how we present ourselves to anyone else, it's always important to show up as we are and know that people need to do that as well. I keep my circle very, very small on purpose. I can call 4 people my close friends, and that's on purpose. I know that these people care about me. I know who they are. And it's so important that we evaluate who people are at their core, understand what their morals are, what are their values, where do they come from in their family, like what are they bringing to the table, what's their truest identity. And it's so essential that we do this because that's how we understand people and how they function. And so I know that over and over again, no matter where we are, no matter what the situation may be, if we're showing up authentically and we're being all that we are, we can have truly meaningful relationships no matter where we are. If it's a work relationship or it's a personal relationship, it is all the same at the end of the day.
Yes to that. Okay, so we're going to get into, thank you both. Thank you all for your insights on this question. Ayana says, thanks for calling that out, Janice. Being intentional is important and is also something we have to continue to exercise, especially when it comes to friendships or any relationship, being intentional about cultivating and nurturing. Love, love, love that. All right, so in cross-cultural friendships, just understanding each other's backgrounds is absolutely key. It's critical. What element does bravery play when building relationships across cross-cultural, like cultural differences? So I want to ask Dr. Olivia this question first, and then I have a question for Lauren.
For sure. And I agree with everyone. It's been great to hear everyone's comments. What I'll say about bravery is that it means that you're going to have to be taking that chance to say that you don't know something. A lot of times we're very focused on making sure that we know things. We don't want to say, I don't know. It's scary to admit that. So the bravery that comes along in learning the culture of another peer is being able to say, hey, I want to remain curious. I want to know about this. I'm going to be okay getting it wrong. And I'm going to continue to learn about this person because they're going to continue to evolve. A lot of times we get so stuck in our ways of wanting to say that our lens is the lens that everyone has, but that's not the case. So we want to make sure that when we are pushing for that bravery, that we're lacing it in some curiosity and some freedom to say that you don't know, and that's okay. Wiggle that out if you need to. So yeah, that's what I'll say.
Appreciate that. I love that. Lauren, I have a question. So we're talking about bravery. So thank you, Dr. Olivia, for bringing that to the conversation. We could all use some humility and saying, I don't know, yes to that. When we're talking about this, how do we also foster genuine connections without unintentionally appropriating elements of another person's culture? And I'd love to hear, Lauren, especially from you, because at the beginning, you said something very beautiful, that you were honored that you were able to hold space for other people's stories. So can you share a little bit about how we do this well without just appropriating or cannibalizing another group's culture?
Yes, love that, and love what you said, Olivia. And that's been something that I've been sharing a lot on my journey with people. I guess here in New Zealand, which is where I've been practicing all these things, there's something that I want to state is that the weight of colonization is still very, present. And that's what struck me as soon as I arrived here. And it is not my French ancestors that colonized this land, but my French ancestors colonized other land. Like they did the nasties. So when I came here, I was aware that it was a difficult place and a difficult thing to talk about. And yet, because I wasn't fully aware of the difficulty of it, because I didn't grow up here, it gave me a form of, I want to say, both naivety and courage to go and knock on the door. So I had this idea that I could go and use my skills to record these stories of these women and take their portrait, and then I was also giving them a recorder so that they could record the sounds of their daily life. And so it was like a co-creation with them. And as the more I was getting into the project, the more I became aware of this thing called Pakeha paralysis, which this man, Hote de Barnes, kind of explained, which was this, he put a name on this fear that is around here with people, Pakeha being people who come from European descent, so the white people in New Zealand, that people are so afraid of making mistakes and perpetuating cultural appropriation and making these wrong steps, that they don't take any steps at all. And so everybody is kind of afraid, and they don't want to do wrong, so they don't do good. And so it creates this separation. But I wasn't fully aware of that at the start. So I just knocked on the door, and I went to speak to this first Maori woman and told her, I have this idea. What do you think? I'm open to your feedback. What do you have to bring to the table? And she said, hell yeah, you have to do it. And I would love to be a part of it. And the more I was getting into it, the more Pakeha people would come to me and be like, I can't believe you're doing this. It must be so scary. I would never do that. And they would say, it's probably because you're French. And I would say that I think being French only made the first step easier, because I knew I didn't know everything. So I started to just ask questions, and I would state what you said, Olivia, when I would meet these women. I would just say, I'm learning, and I would love to learn if I make a mistake, so that you can tell me when it is my time to speak, when it is my time to listen. And also, I want to bring a little note to that, being aware that I realized that I couldn't just rely on these women to teach me everything I needed to know, that I needed to go and do my work, because then I rely on them again to inform me and to tell me about all the hard things. So that was a big learning that I really, really took on. And going back to the question, what has been very important on this journey is active listening. With each woman, I had interviews that would go for anywhere between 3 to 6 hours, where I would be there with the woman and I would speak very minimally, but I would be present. I would be staring in her eyes, and just, I had to listen to every detail so I could go back to it and just nod. And that active listening, I think, is just letting go of the ego, of participating to the conversation and just being there to listen. And I think it's probably the greatest gift we can give to other people, to be listening.
Yes, to that. I don't want to sum anything up. Janice, I want to come to you because you do, inclusion work. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on just, again, more on top of what Dr. Olivia and Lauren have shared about us fostering these genuine connections without unintentionally appropriating someone else's culture or, offending, etc. How do we do this better?
Yeah, I think the idea of, one, being okay with not knowing and asking questions, but I am going to give an action item, because by way of my role, I always give an action item. When, there's communication and curiosity that comes across in these relationships. And if we're considering each other a friend, let's make it a two-way street, right? Don't make a spectacle of someone. I've been at dinner tables and I'm rapid fire 21 questions of the Black experience, being a Black woman, being in the C-suite, do you use the N-word, or what's the, you know what I'm saying? What on the basis of what? So if we're talking and we're sharing experiences, please make that a two-way street. Please make that a learning and growing moment for each of us. We don't know everything about anything, right? So we should be able to talk about our backgrounds and our experiences. If I'm telling you how, we celebrate Thanksgiving in our family, or some universal truths across the Black community, then offer up something of your own, something that you didn't know, or something that I didn't know about your background or your community. I think, to Lauren's point, listening and educating, and not just making a spectacle of someone when you're asking these questions. When it comes to cultural informants, make sure that's a two-way street, and not just a tell me all about being Black. I read it in NPR, but tell me more. It's got to be more than that.
Okay, yes to that. I've definitely been in those conversations. Love the way making it a two-way street. LL, I saw you on mute, so I'm gonna come to you in 1 second, but I do want to read just a few of these. Active listening is critically important. That's what Jawan said. Taylor said, I appreciate how you empowered the Maori women to share their stories by the way you approach with grace, Lauren. So Taylor's giving you props to that. I believe, Christina said that her husband is listening in and he is loving this convo, by the way. Shout out to Christina's husband. So glad to have you. Everybody's welcome at Power of the Pack. LL, you unmuted, so I want to make sure that you can share. Please take it away.
This is just one quick add-on. I mean, I love all of that, the asking questions and the willingness to be open and be changed. And I had a coach, actually a writing coach, put me to this question to me. It wasn't a question really. It was, when you're putting out a book, you have to be willing to feel everything. And I have since taken that on. That is a great way to look at life. I have to just be willing to, because what's the option? It's making myself smaller, or allowing myself and other people to take up space. And that's going to sometimes be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's going to feel great. It's going to feel scary. And if I'm not agreeing to feel everything, then I'm agreeing to feel like that. That's just how I want to live. It's a yes and, like an improviser's approach to life, which I really like.
For sure. And I'll add in addition to Janice, with some action items, recognizing that connection and surveillance are two different things. So when we're saying connecting, we're saying that you're going to be adding in things. If you're adding, you're asking about someone's culture, then the expectation is for you to do that exploration for yourself. And culture is going to be you going through and thinking about how your race has impacted you, how your sexuality, gender expression, your ability status, your family dynamics, if you were raised in a single parent home versus having your grandparents in the home as well. Just really going through that for yourself, because there's no such thing as a cultureless being. So kind of knowing that when you're talking to someone and you're hoping to have this cross-cultural connection, thinking about where your culture is too, as that person is providing you their cherished story, because you don't want to put someone under surveillance. It's awkward when you're just sitting there and you're just taking in everything that a person is sharing, but you're not giving anything yourself. So really pushing yourself to explore your own culture as well before going into these dynamics.
I love the language that we all are all using here. Thank you all for giving us a plethora of words to use to help our experiences. I would love to, we're going to go to the next question, but before that, I'm going to read a few comments. Dr. Kayla, Tracy, and Danielle, be ready, because y'all are up on the hot seat for this next question. But, Dawn says, learning our own lessons and swallowing our privilege to listen and letting go of ego, surrendering to guidance and humility goes a long way. Thank you for that. Vesna says, Janice, loving the dialogue concept you just mentioned, with a beautiful heart emoticon. All right, so this next question is I'm gonna have Dr. Kayla start us off first. Many, and we're going to keep it 100, right? Because Lauren kept it 100 about colonization. Yes, thank you for bringing that into this conversation. Many racially and culturally homogenous spaces exist as a result of historic and systemic design. So we just that facts are facts. So how do we acknowledge this and effectively move forward? And as we progress, how can individuals and groups promote inclusion and celebrate diversity without tokenism too, right? So Dr. Kayla, that's a lot, but you're going to start us off here, and then Tracy, and then Danielle will jump in.
I think first and foremost, it's important to understand that we all come from very, very different backgrounds. Our lives, our stories, they are so different. things that we experience historically, of course, they impact us at different levels, and we have to be aware of that. I had a conversation with someone the other day about a movie that I watched, Killers of the Flower Moon. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. And she mentioned to me that a particular lady that she knew was of a Indian tribe. Her family was a descendant of them. And they'd experienced some harsh racism, torture, murder, just horrendous things. And she'd expressed these things online about how she hated the white man. And this person that I was speaking with, she didn't understand where she was coming from or why she was saying these things. And I had to share with her the truth. People have experiences. Systemic racism is not dead. Racism at any level is not dead. It looks different, but it remains. And I made it a point to let her know that while it's not happening currently to this particular lady that she was talking about, it happened to someone she loved. And that's the same thing for me. It's the same thing for many of us. Our ancestors come from these hard backgrounds, these things that happened to them. They did so much to their lives, and yet it did not break them. We have to understand that things happen to all of us. We all have hard experiences, but it's a matter of understanding them, using them to empower ourselves, and understanding that other people have their own experiences as well. So I think that's the big thing. We have to understand the whole picture. We can't say, oh, I want this particular part, let me pick it out and only embrace that or only understand that. We need to get down to the core and accept things for what they are.
Amen. Okay. Yes, Tracy.
Woo. Just dropped the mic. No, I 100% agree with everything that you're saying. And I would just piggyback on, I think growing up, I learned this from my mother. She would say, when you're apologizing, don't say but. Apologize, let it sit. That's it. It's over, right? And I do feel like what I have, and this is part of my work again, is connecting with individuals on a human level. If we're just quiet and soft enough to listen to each other. And I'll give a quick example. I grew up in Tennessee, and a lot of my friends are Republican or whatever they are. And I had a conversation with one of my friends, and I said, what is your biggest concern when your son is out late at night? And she said, getting home safe, not getting stopped by the cops and getting home safe. She's a white woman, I'm a Black woman. And I said, oh, we have the same concerns about our children. Imagine that. We both care about the same thing, but we can't hear each other when we're in this friction. And I think that helps us across the board in it's just empathy, human empathy. We're all waking up, opening our eyes, brushing our teeth, all of these things that we have in common. And if we can strike that first, then we can actually connect enough to get down to the core of the other things that are a part of what we're showing up with and we're feeling and we're heard about or we care about because of our ancestors and what they've been through. And you being able, if you're from the other side of that, being able to say, I hate that happened. I hate that they did this. However, I want to show up differently, and I hope I'm giving this opportunity and chance, and I think we can open those gates for one another.
Okay, I hope people were writing notes. Danielle.
This is going to be a little left field, but I think it's really interesting too, because I don't know where this started within our society, but I think that we've become, we've been indoctrinated in this sense of like negative feelings should never happen. Like we should never be embarrassed. We should never be, we should never feel like our feelings get hurt. We should never feel, like we were vulnerable and it was taken advantage of. Like these things, when these negative feelings come up, it almost kind of gives us this like automatic reaction of like anger, of like, that shouldn't happen. But like, the reality of it is that that's part of being human, because your feelings, there's no way out but through when it comes to the way that you feel and when you're interacting with people. So, you know, when you open yourself up to someone and someone doesn't reciprocate, or if someone does hurt your feelings, and, you know, says something insensitive, you know, we automatically shut down, or we, you know, you automatically get angry and start to kind of like react in a very different way in that sense. Instead of saying, okay, this is how I'm feeling. I don't know whether or not this feeling is rational or not, but let me look at the situation, express the way that I'm feeling, and then kind of go through it in that way, right? But then also it kind of goes back to that bravery piece, because being brave means that you don't just stop trying once your feelings are hurt. You actually keep going, and you actually start to have those things. Because I've been insensitive. I've said insensitive things to people from, you know, different backgrounds before, and, you know, and apologized or felt bad, or, you know, realized that it was insensitive after the fact. And, you know, everybody does it. Everybody makes mistakes. We are actually human. So being able to forgive other people, forgive yourself, to be able to feel those feelings and to have those difficult conversations without getting angry, and really kind of being able to, you know, have those discussions is really important. But then in addition to that, please, for the love of God, do not go find yourself a friend of a different background and be like, teach me everything about being Mexican, or teach me everything about being Italian. Because no, they are not. I am not your Black woman Stuart. There's a reason in, you know, in mythology that the magical Negro exists. I'm not your magical Negro. I'm not going to teach you everything there is to know. Google is your friend. Like, that is not the way that you go find a friend, that there's somebody who doesn't look like you or is from a different background. If you're going to that person for those reasons, then your intentions are completely off. Yeah. And that is also really important, of like being able to connect with someone on a human level, not because I need to go find friends that look different from me because I'm white and all my other friends are white, and that's a bad thing. Yes, it is 100%. However, that is something that revolves with you inward. So a lot of times what we do is we decide that like it's the other person. So we talk about other people as opposed to having the conversation of like, what's that for me? Like, when you don't like somebody, that's a personal thing. That has more to do with you than the other person, because they're living their lives and they're going about their business. They don't care about you. So like, what is it about you that is that they're reflecting back at you that you don't like? So like, there's certain things where it's like, you really do have to start exploring within yourself how you feel and what that does to other people within those reactions. And then being able to actually listen actively, Lauren, so thank you. and really say to yourself, like, okay, what does this mean? And how does that, and like what that, like, and act accordingly.
I appreciate the separating the individual from the group as well. I do want to make sure that bubbles up to the surface. Okay, so I am looking at the time and I'm like, so I have two questions that I'm going to ask, one to Dr. Olivia and LL, and one to Janice and Lauren. So Dr. Olivia, LL, I'd love for you all to just kind of help us out with some effective strategies to address emotional labor that is required to bridge these gaps. Because let's be real, there are power dynamics in every relationship based on personality, based on cultural experiences, based on so many things. So, you know, emotional labor is going to always be involved. So how do we ensure that the emotional labor is balanced and not disproportionately carried by one party or the other? You know, and maybe even think about how can you help people have the language that they need to say, I'm doing a little bit more emotional labor than I should right now. All right. So Dr. Olivia, I'm gonna start with you first and then go to LL.
Okay, so I want to acknowledge the importance that Dr. Kayla brought up in mentioning discriminatory practice as far as racism is concerned. I'll even add in sexism and the other isms as well. We want to talk about those because we know that somewhere someone is being ostracized or put aside because they identify a certain way. And that's a barrier to creating our cross-cultural relationships. For the emotional labor piece, I'd say I'd recommend the Nidra Tawwab Glover book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. There's also another book that talks about dynamics with families that give really helpful tidbits that you can share and actually say to people in your relationships and things like that. And I think it's very nice because it's not so wordy and not so intellectualized, where sometimes we can just say words just to say them and they go over our heads. Not everyone is open to the wording in that way. Something else I will also recommend that I mentioned in my TEDx was incorporating diversity in the home. Incorporating and understanding that even if you're in the same house, even if you look the same, you're going to have a different background and a different understanding. And that's okay, because a lot of times we're looking for similarity for peace, but difference is also a peaceful space as well. So again, I know that was a lot, but I know we're on time, so I'll just stop.
So I think those are, again, just great points. I am going to go a little bit woo because I was out in Qatar. I'm living, 8 time zones away from family and friends. I actually did find a great therapist there, cognitive behavioral therapy. I love it for dealing with, especially with emotional labor, because you get lots of practical tips. But, in the middle of the night, those things aren't available. And I think that one of the worst things that we could do is like go online and start looking for answers in the middle of the night, because that's when we're going to find some of those maybe shady wellness people. They've got a supplement for you. But I like to light candles and do meditation and do whatever I can to draw within myself and feel present in my body. Where am I feeling emotions in my body? How can I acknowledge that and not try to stop it? The biggest thing, and again, this goes back to Danielle, what you were saying, is that we are so uncomfortable with being uncomfortable and thinking that that's wrong. We fight against it, and that actually just makes it get bigger. And I use all of these techniques, and I also love Yoga Nidra as a wonderful way to just relax the body, and that puts you in a very open, receptive state. And so I then do a like a visual sealing practice, a visualization to seal myself. Like I imagine myself in golden light and then like a silver shimmery cloth going over me. It might sound hokey and it might not work for you. Not all things work for all people, and that's okay. But I had to really turn to a lot of techniques like that in order to stay sane sometimes when I felt really alone and really out there. And then recognizing that we're all, honestly, I loved the comment about I'm worried about my son and I'm worried about my son. Everybody's worried about their son, and we are, at the end of it, we're all humans, but we put on all of these stories and they manifest in these different ways. My outfit, my glasses, my hair. And then you start to think that everyone is so wildly different, and we aren't. So.
Appreciate that. I'm going to come to Janice and Lauren. We're going to talk a bit about, and thank you all for everything that's been shared up to this moment. Thank you, community, for your comments. Please keep them coming. We see them. Janice, Lauren, let's talk a bit about, because both of you have done some really amazing work in creating safe and brave spaces in the work that you do. What are the essential elements? So how can each of us create a container wherever we are for safe and brave spaces, so that they support the cross-cultural connections and cross-cultural friendships? Janice, I'll start with you. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. The need for these spaces are very important, just because it really does, specifically in the workplace or in many places, it breaks down the barriers, right? Whether that's to collaboration, whether that's to connection, and who knows what comes after that. And I'll tell you 2 things I've learned, and forgive me that I can't remember who said it, but don't talk about us without us, and do research with and not research on, right? Meaning, if we're nurturing these brave spaces, these safe spaces, make sure that those who you are trying to support are either speaking, guiding, leading it, right? You are not there speaking for them, and be okay with that. Be okay that you are not centered in that conversation. It is okay to facilitate, do all of those things, but be okay that you're not centered. And I think it's it's important and it's key. And I'll tell you, when we had our very first Brave Space, when George Floyd was killed, there were so many things that people didn't realize that I too experienced as a Black woman. You know, it is very much so like, wait, so you've been profiled, because, you know, they see me as the good Black, right? So I can't believe this has happened to you. Yes, it does, because good, bad, or indifferent, I'm still Black, right? So I think when people learned that even the ones that you sit next to every day that you love and you adore, getting to the deep and getting to the, dang, this happens to you, that really broadens your aperture, right? And it really does, as I often say, when it comes to these relationships, it brings in more light, just like on a camera, right? Just like in photography. So I think it's very important in understanding these spaces. Don't go into these spaces with fear. Go into these spaces with openness. It's not going to be comfortable all the time, and that is okay.
Appreciate that. Lauren, would love to hear your thoughts on, how you're creating these safe and brave spaces, but also, what does that do for inside of you as the person who is also creating that space? Love to hear that.
Love that. A couple of things, a couple of moments in the realm of the exhibition, I think I can touch on. One of them is the moment where I sit down with the woman and have this interview, this really intimate interview, where we go right back to the start of her life, and then we can take it as far as she wants. So in setting that space, first, I would always ask the woman, where does she want to have that chat? It can be external, it can be somewhere that she likes, it can be at her home, it can be, where she wants to have it. And then letting it be a comfortable space. We can have some tea, we can have some cakes, whatever is needed, and then acknowledging that this is not an easy conversation, and also checking with her and with myself if now is the right time. And because these conversations can't happen with everyone all the time, everywhere. They need a particular setting because they're emotional labor. So this is an important one. And then another one is, I'm trying to recall the second half of your question, Amber. Oh yes, how it moves me. Yeah. I guess. I feel so close to these women. And so I'm going to use that word again, honored, because a lot of these conversations have led them to share things that they had never shared before with anybody. And we had met very recently and seen each other just a couple of times. And so the amount of trust that I received was just, my heart is wide open, and I feel like I've got their back. I can hold them, even if I don't know everything in this moment. I can hold them because it is safe, and I feel that they feel safe because they're sharing these things, and it's touching me so deep. And the last thing I want to touch on is, after these interviews, I put together these audio stories. I'll take her voice from the interview and chop it in pieces and bring it down to 15 minutes, and then add all the sounds that she's recorded from her daily life, from the sounds of her children, from the sounds of her going on with her day and the birds outside her house. And when people come in the exhibition, they see these photography portraits on each panel, and they're given a pair of headphones, and they get to sit down in front of any portrait they want and just press play, and then listen to this woman sharing her story, these women that they don't know. And this space also has to be a very safe space, because there's huge work that happens for people who come in to listen. A lot of Pākehā, of white people come, a lot of Māori people come, and their experience is different, but there's so much tears that happen, so many people hugging, who are listening, who don't know each other. They're sitting right next to each other and listening to the same story. And then I see them hugging because they're having this moment, not knowing each other, not knowing the woman. And yet, with all the differences that we have, there's this common ground and this common emotional response that is touching you. Like, I feel this, I know this, or I see her. And then often the women who are portrayed would tell me, message me, that they have people stopping in their town who are stopping them and saying, who would like come and hug them and say thank you and how grateful they felt and how it changed their life in some way. So this can all happen because it was made in safe spaces. So it's essential.
So important. Thank you. And beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna give each person, thank you, Lauren, for sharing. Thank you, all of you, for sharing. 20 seconds soundbite closing thought. But before we do, we want to know from our community, when you think about Power of the Pack and our topic today, what is one thing that you learned that you will take with you? So please drop that in the comments for us. We want to know quick closing soundbite, and we have the order here in our chat. Dr. Kayla, you're going to have 20 seconds, and then everybody just jump right in after each other.
So I want to bring up two things. One, you need to make sure you are doing work on yourself. If you look in the mirror and you do not know who you are beside what you're looking at internally, you cannot present yourself well, you cannot gain respect, etc. Another thing, you are always going to be seated at a table. You get to decide who you are at that table. And just as well, you need to be able to respect, honor, and try to understand everyone else's experiences, because there's a reason you are at that table and there's something greater that you are contributing to.
I would like to say that if you have a closed fist, nothing goes out, nothing goes in, nothing comes in. And that I'm hoping that we all take away being opening ourselves, and also being respectful of those who are opening themselves to us, and learning to absolutely connecting on a human level means so much to me. And I'm hoping that we're all able to exercise that as much as possible so that we have a more inclusive world.
Well, I'm a huge fan of storytelling as a gateway to understanding. So, whether you read a book by someone who doesn't look like you, or go to a movie about a culture that's not your own, or go to a storytelling show where you get to hear from people who aren't you, it's key to opening up your mind. I learned that at a 10-day silent meditation retreat, that I make up a lot of stories about people that are running constantly. You see it and you see it.
I would say being authentic, honest, graceful, and understanding, as well as, holding space and listening to others, to Lauren's point, but not taking up space if it's not yours to own.
I'm going to say we need to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable in these places, and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and to have empathy for others and for ourselves in that space.
I challenge everyone to put themselves in a place where they're the only person who looks like them in the room. So if you have never been in a room where you are the only person that there's at least one other person that looks like you, then you never really are in a space where you can be uncomfortable enough to learn about somebody else. So if you're a white person, go to a room with nothing but Hispanic people, or go to a room and be in a room with nothing but Black people, or be in a room with, nothing but Native American people, and vice versa. Only because, in that sense of a lot of us, being Black women in corporate America, we are usually the only people who look like us in a room, but it never is the opposite. And people get very uncomfortable when that happens. But I do think that it does create a level of empathy and a deeper level of understanding when you're able to put yourself in a place where you really are the only one. And I think that really does help in the long run.
And I'd say remain curious, but then also remain in self-discovery as you're taking on these new relationships with people who have different cultures from yourself. I like to talk about the word sonder while teaching future counselors. So sonder is knowing that the person next to you has a complex life just as you do. And so knowing that, and knowing that your lens isn't the only lens, is super important. So yeah. And thank you for having me here.
Yes. Oh man, thank you all for joining us for this important conversation. Beautiful
thank you.
conversation. I just appreciate each of our guest speakers. I want to tell our community, thank you for sharing your insights with us and what you learned. I'm loving to see it. I'm seeing a lot of people saying vulnerability, a lot of people pulling from what our speakers shared today. Don't forget to raise her profile. Connect with some audience members in the comment section on LinkedIn. Y'all are on LinkedIn. Click their name and then click connect. Maybe send them a message like, hey, we were in the chat together. Connect with all of our speakers. These folks are doing just amazing, dynamic work. Please reach out to them, give them some love, pump them up, and tell them that you appreciate what they shared today. I also want to say when we bring our community together, we engage the power of the pack. And when we share and like and discuss, our power grows and our connections deepen. I want to ask, do you want to be a guest? We got 2 episodes left in 2023, but we have a full slate of amazing conversations ahead in 2024. If you want to be a guest on Power of the Pack, please scan this with your phone, fill out the form, or nominate somebody. Let us know, who you think we should have a guest, what topics we should talk about. You can always also drop that link. There's a link in the chat that you can fill out as well. You can email us your suggestions or topics. You can also DM me on LinkedIn or DM the Female Quotient on LinkedIn as well. Mark your calendar and bring a friend. There are, again, just 2 more Power of the Pack episodes left this year, and you do not want to miss them. We are talking about, unpacking parenting as a 50-50 split, mostly thinking about relationships that are heterosexual, but we will get into not heterosexual relationships as well on the 5th. So please come to that. There's going to be a lot of vulnerability happening there. And then on the 12th, we are unpacking the intergenerational workplace and the future of work. 5 generations are in the workplace. So we're going to talk about that and what our hopes are for 2024. Really amazing conversations ahead. Thank you all so very much for joining us today. And we will see you next week. Take care.